purpose. Nobody serves that up. There is no place where you can go and purchase it. And whatever that purpose may be in life, as you can probably guess, this show is a centerpiece of why I get up every day and want to live my life and continue to do what I do. It's a central part of the purpose that I have in my life. And there are other things that are going on too. But I just wanted to just drop that in to remind you, to remind myself about that. 87, go ahead.
I think that's interesting that you say that, because at the end of the last night's game, did you see where that Andrew Whitworth, he was a lineman for the Rams.
For the Rams, what did he say?
He said, at the end of the day, we're all going to die.
Did he say that?
Yeah. He said, doesn't matter if you win, you lose, whatever we do, at the end of the day, we're all going to die. I mean, he had a little bit more to it that I can't say on air, but...
Well, I guess maybe he's saying that...
Perspective,
that we're all in this together. We share so much in common: life, death, the struggles and the of life, and the wonderful moments. We all share these kinds of things, and so much of it is random. And that's what's disconcerting to some people. Who your parents are, the context of your life, what your environment in which you are born, and what all that's chance and randomness. You had nothing to do with that. But again, that being said, our choices do make a difference. So, in spite of the randomness, the ambiguity, the unevenness of life, we still make choices, and we can shape our destiny in large measure. So he's trying to make a point, maybe. I have to look at that, Gary, during the break. We all are in this together. And that's why it's unfortunate that we go after one another on religion, politics, and all these matters in ways that are so undermining to our the integrity of who we are as humans and as a society. It's unfortunate. It does affect health. It does. I'll look and see what he had to say. There's a story trending about obesity being tied or connected to higher cancer rates. What you should know is this. There's some good news within this story and some bad news, and then I have a totally good news story aside from this. The rates of new cancer cases and cancer deaths have been on a decline in the United States over the past several decades, even though cancer is still the second leading cause of death in our country. However, that being said, there are certain cancers that are becoming more common, not among the elderly, not among people in midlife, but among younger people, younger Americans. And researchers think obesity is to blame. This is from a new report from the American Cancer Society and the National Cancer Institute. Rates of six different independent cancers are correlated with obesity among adults 25 to 49 between the years they looked at 1995 to 2014. This study was published in this report was published in the Lancet Public Health, and based on information in Cancer in North America database. When you come back, I will tell you what those cancers are, and expand upon this. And then I have a totally good news story about cancer. LTN Coast to Coast and globally. nutrition. I'm reporting on a report published in The Lancet, and it's an important report because it's talking about the connection between obesity and cancer. And we are, as you know, if you listen to the show even once in a while, you're keenly aware that we are in an obesity epidemic, and it has us in a grip, no question. Nevertheless, this report, notwithstanding the progress in the decline in the prevalence of cancer over the past several decades, certain cancers are now emerging as more common among people 25 to 49 years of age. These are not elderly people. These are young people approaching midlife. Young people and then into midlife. And these cancers are multiple myeloma, colorectal, endometrial, gallbladder, kidney, and pancreatic cancers. And this correlation apparently is, well, let me give you some numbers. Even though cancer most often strikes, as you know, the elderly, the sharpest increases they found were in younger age groups. Pancreatic cancer typifies the pattern. Between 1995 and 2014, the incidence of pancreatic cancer rose by 0.77% annually among adults 45 to 49, by 2.47% among those ages 30 to 34, and by 4.34% among those 25 to 29. Kidney cancer had the sharpest annual increase for young Americans, 6.23% between 95 and 2014. Now you may say, geez, that's not a lot. Those are small percentages. No, they're not. It's all relative, right? And for that kind of increase, that's a big increase. That's statistically significant. Those are statistically significant findings. Some cancers have a fairly clear cause. We know smoking causes what? Lung cancer. HPV for cervical cancer. HPV-16 for head and neck cancer. Many are brought on by a confluence of chance, the way people live, their lifestyle, what they inherited, and their health factors. Obesity is among the most, how can I put it, powerful, influential factors. The science has linked excess body weight to about 40%. Are you ready for this? 40% of cancer cases. Listen to what I said. Obesity is now linked to excess body weight in 40% of the cancer cases in the United States. That's stunning. And it's risk factor for common types of breast, ovarian, and liver cancer, as well as those that are highlighted in this new Lancet report, or this report in Lancet. By 2014, obesity accounted for 60%, my Lord, 60% of endometrial cancers, 36% of gallbladder cancers, 33% of kidney cancers, 17% of pancreatic cancers, and 11% of multiple myeloma among adults 30 and older in this new study, in this new report. You cannot ignore these data, these findings. You just can't. So, as I've been saying for a number of years on this show, as well as others, I'm not the only one that is on this. Obesity is not an aesthetic problem. Obesity is a now considered a disease by many, is a devastating bane on our society. People are dying left and right. Not only is it associated with cancer, it's associated with cardiovascular disease. associated with type 2 diabetes. When you start to calculate, take an accounting of all the people that are dying because they have excess body weight, it's, my goodness, it is, I mean, it's even hard to get your head wrapped around it. I don't know if anybody's calculated those numbers. We can find that. You know, how many deaths of all, whether it's cancer, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, whatever it is, are directly connected to obesity. I'll bet the number is staggering. So on the one hand, we've made progress in diminishing the prevalence of cancer, but we seem to be going backwards with certain types of cancers, the 6 that I mentioned, because of the obesity epidemic. We've taken one step back and maybe 3, one step forward and 3 back. And I report this because to keep us aware, to keep our consciousness raised about this terrible issue. In the Baltimore Sun, there's a story about a man. His name is Jay. His sister, Jay Smatt, his name is Jay Smatt, and his sister is Marcia Bradley. She gives this account in the Baltimore Sun talking about her brother. 3 years ago, he was told he was going to die of cancer. He's still alive. And her account, it's done in narrative as a story. He couldn't walk. He had this rare form of cancer that was attacking his spine, apparently, in some form or fashion, and he was unable to walk. And they told him he had months. They told him to get his affairs in order because the time was near. And that was 3 years ago. And there are other details to the story. It's worth a read. It's in the Baltimore Sun. She writes pretty well and gives an interesting account in story form. And, you know, you just don't know. There's so much we know about cancer, but I suspect that there's even more that we don't know. And how to explain what happens to certain people under certain conditions. Those you would think would be okay, and they're not, and those that are not or are. It's very perplexing, very confusing. And, you know, cancer is one of nature's terrible mistakes. It's one way to think about it. Some say it's one of ways nature calls out the herd and makes room for others. You know, which one do you, which point of view would you subscribe to? Dr. Patrick Buick will be the guest on the show in the second hour. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Buick. He'll be calling in from South Africa, by the way. Dr. Buick, the only thing with Dr. Buick is that we don't get him on here enough. He should be on here a lot. He'll be on in the second hour. I'm excited to talk about him. You'll see he's a nice man. He's very smart. Has interesting story to tell. We'll get to Dr. Buick at the top of the hour, or a little after the top of the hour. We do run I'll let Gary tell you how we run this show.
You can reach us at 877-897-8255. That's 877-897-TALK. Don't forget Dr. Garko's personal emails, drgarko at letstalknutrition.com. Follow us, like us, share us on Facebook at Let's Talk Nutrition. Also on Instagram at the Let's Talk Nutrition. And subscribe to our YouTube channel at Let's Talk Nutrition. We have over 60,000 views now, and it's closed caption for the hearing impaired, and it's archived by date.
And we go on the air at 9:06 a.m. Eastern, and we're off the air a little before 11, 10:56.
About 10:56. But if you go to www.Let's Talk Nutrition, you can watch all the shows because they're on there, and we have a link to our podcast. So if there's something you missed or something you want to review or something you want to share, you can do it that way also.
Podcast is what, iHeart?
Yes, iHeartRadio.
Last week I was reporting on that life-threatening weather up in the, Northeast and Midwest. And for the second time in 3 days, this story was reported on Huffington Post on the 3rd. That was yesterday. And for the second time in 3 days, the authorities report that a university student died after being found unresponsive outside as temperatures dipped into the negatives across much of the country last week. The young man was 19 years of age, was a student at the University of Vermont. He was found lying unresponsive in snow behind a business in Burlington, Mass. On Saturday. Foul play was not suspected. His name was Connor Gage. Connor Gage. He was from Little Falls, New York. He was majoring in neuroscience, and this was his first year as a college student. 19 years old. Police said he was cutting through a parking lot when he was stopped by a fence. At that point in time, temperatures were -1 to -4 degrees, and he was not properly dressed for the cold, the authorities reported. So, it's a shame. There you go, right? Can you imagine the grief of his parents and his friends? And these are the things that happen in life and make sometimes things so difficult. And our heartfelt condolences to his family. I don't know who Connor. I'd never met Connor. I don't know Connor, but I do, in a sense, because again, we're all in it together. I went and looked at the piece of videotape by Andrew Whitworth during that last break. He's a lineman for the Los Angeles Rams. He's a big guy, man. And they lost yesterday. And he put it all in perspective. And he said, you know what? And at the end of the day, he said, we're all going to die. And, we have to keep this in perspective. And you got to just keep going on. It's a game. You win, you lose, whatever. It's just a game. And, he was trying to put it in perspective that what is really important in life. Yes, it's entertaining. The football is entertaining and this and that and all that. I get it. And he's right. So good for him. Appreciated him saying that, Gary.
It's one of those whatever it takes type mentalities that we've talked about on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm impressed. These football players, some of them are Rhodes Scholars, for heaven's sake. They're awfully smart, and they're sensitive. I mean, they're giants, right? They're big guys, and you would think that they don't have a sensitive bone in their body, but that's not the case. Some are very sensitive, very thoughtful, philosophical, insightful men. What I really don't like are sore winners that gloat when they win and don't show any regard for the other team and whatnot. It doesn't sit well with me. Give us a call.
You can reach us at 877-897-8255. That's 877-897-TALK.
There's so many things I can report. The Washington measles outbreak that I reported on last week is now up to 48 cases, while other states grapple with the disease. Many health authorities are saying this is happening because people are not getting vaccinated. And, that does probably make some people upset, but Washington State is averaging more than one new measles cases a day. Since January 1st, Clark County Public Health has confirmed 47 cases of measles. In King County, home of Seattle, at least one confirmed case was reported. And, you can say what you want about vaccines. This is what I've often said. If vaccines were banned today, all vaccines, would we be better off? You want to know the answer? In giant capital letters in neon, no, we would not. We would not. This is one living example of that. People are not getting vaccinated. They're not having their children vaccinated. And this is the consequence of that. This measles outbreak didn't just drop out of the ether. So I'm just saying. Now, whatever your point of view is about vaccines, we come back. Dr. Patrick Buick will be on the show. I'm so delighted that he's on. Very smart. He's good researcher, man. Good medical researcher, knows his stuff. He'll be calling in from South Africa. I don't know if he's calling in from Durban or where he is. We'll have to check. We'll ask him, of course. But we are across the United States, but we're also international. LTN, therefore, coast to coast and globally. Welcome to Let's Talk Nutrition, the 2019 edition of LTN. Thanks for stopping by. It's great to be with you. I hope you're having a good day. You had a good weekend. You enjoyed the Super Bowl. I thought, I didn't have a dog in the fight, so I watched some of it, first half, and then I bailed on it. I got bored with it a little bit. But, congratulations to the New England Patriots. They were very successful, and they achieved something that very few teams have been able to do, and congratulations to them. Edelman was outstanding. He won the Most Valuable Player award. He was remarkable. I like watching because I like to see the achievement of these athletes and how they are able to. You talk about stress and performance, man, difficulty. And of course, Brady's an interesting character because of his approach to health. He's 41 years old. This is his 10th appearance. That was his 10th appearance in the Super Bowl. He now has 6 rings?
Yeah, 6 rings.
And he's 41. He's a remarkable human specimen. He's taken care of himself. He does have a couple of peculiar ideas about nutrition and body chemistry, but that aside, I give him high marks for his effort. He stays, he eats a plant-based diet. He's a vegan. I don't use that language. I prefer whole food, plant-based. To me, there's a difference. You might say, well, you're quibbling over semantics. Well, maybe not. We'll deal with that another day. Where I would like to direct your attention is to Professor Patrick Buick. Dr. Buick has been a guest on this show far too infrequently, in my opinion. I would love to have Dr. Buick on far more often. He's the head of, I think he's still the head of immunology at the Faculty of Health Sciences, University of Stellenbosch. I'll have to ask him that. Maybe I'm working off an old bio, I'm not sure. But he has done work in the arena of plant sterols and sterolins in order to help the immune system. You may wonder, what are plant sterols and sterolins? By the time this hour is over, you're going to know, and you're going to understand why they're so important to your immune system. Dr. Buick is, a researcher of the highest integrity, and he's one of these people I refer to all the time that are working, no flash and bang. He's just down there doing his work in South Africa, doing what he does best. Many researchers work in relative obscurity, relatively speaking. People know about him, or the people that read the journals in which their articles are published, or they meet at conferences. Other than that, they're not seeking fame and fortune. They're seeking to just do good science. And I consider Dr. Buick among them. Dr. Buick, welcome back to the show. Happy New Year. It is really great to have you back on.
Dr. Garko, such an introduction, you actually embarrass me. I'm actually blushing on the side of the telephone. It's really, really good to be back on the show, chatting to you again. And likewise, may 2019 be a wonderful, happy, and especially healthy year for you and your family.
Well, thank you, Doctor.
Far too long. We haven't chatted for quite a while, and it's really wonderful to be back on the show.
Where are you these days? Where are you working? What are you doing?
Well, I'm still in Cape Town. I'm still very much Cape Town based. Just to answer the question, your query, whether I'm still an academic and head of immunology at the Stellenbosch University Medical Faculty. No, I'm not. I am a part-time lecturer with the University of Stellenbosch. For the last 13 years, I've actually started my own company, looking into, obviously conducting research on a contract basis for many companies. We do quite a bit of support services for pharma developing new drugs, not necessarily specifically for the immune system, but very much so in the arena of inflammation and cancer. So it's very exciting, cutting-edge, research taking place with pharma companies. So I'm keeping busy, and I'm still very happy doing what I'm doing.
Speaking of cancer, this might be of interest to you, Dr. Buick. I reported this morning that researchers have studied the incidence of 30 common cancers, including 12 that are obesity related. And they looked at a period from 1995 to 2014. And the population, they looked at the demographic on it. One demographic were people ages 25 to 84. And this report is published in the Lancet Public Health. And what they're saying is, notwithstanding the decline in cancer over the past several decades, even though it's still the second leading cause of death in this country, certain cancers, 6 in particular, multiple myeloma, colorectal, endometrial, gallbladder, kidney, and pancreatic, are on the rise in younger people. And they are correlating it or attributing it to obesity.
Yeah, I agree.
What your reaction to that report?
And obesity. Yeah, I totally buy those findings. It's very concerning to see the increase in the incidence of obesity in younger people, and that is to do with poor nutrition. Obesity is an inflammatory condition. We know that cancer cells thrive on inflammatory markers. So I always say to my patients, be careful. This is a telltale sign that as you're becoming more and more estrogenic and, metabolic syndrome, be careful, because what's happening is that your adipose tissue that you are depositing is becoming a source of inflammatory markers, and with time, it's only a question of time before some of these mutated cells actually become cancerous. And there is a direct link. I totally agree. Obesity and cancer, we're seeing it. It's frightening when we see 18-year-old ladies, girls, now developing breast cancer, something which was unheard of before. It's frightening, and it's really concerning, because we have to put a stop to this increase in incidence.
Is it the same in South Africa as it is here in the U.S., where here in the U.S. it's an epidemic? How do you describe it in South Africa?
I would think it's a very similar thing. I think we are trailing behind the U.S. as far as the incidence of obesity, but we are seeing more and more people, becoming obese. It is a phenomenon which is a global phenomenon, so South Africa is not immune to this fact. And what is really concerning is the fact that many of the indigenous people who were never, ever, had poor nutrition, they're wanting to actually live the life of the Western countries, so they're changing their nutrition. They too are developing diabetes and obesity. So it is definitely following, maybe not the same incidence, but we are certainly on the same upward curve as the U.S.
You make a wonderful point. I talk about this all the time on the show. I understand the importance of clinical trials, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. I get it. But there are living experiments going on right now across the world where what's being imported into certain countries and cultures and indigenous groups is the Western way of living and the Western way of eating. And when that happens, disease rates go up, these chronic diseases, cancer included, obesity included. So the indigenous people of South Africa, how are they called?
Well, we have different tribes. There would be the African tribes local. We have the different tribes like the Zulus and the Xhosa and what have you. Sorry about the click. That's the way we pronounce it, by the way. Xhosa. And, what's really sad is that, as long as these indigenous people were living in the rural areas, growing their own vegetables and collecting their own fruits, and obviously raising their own cattle and goats and what have you, they ate extremely well. They never were exposed to pesticides, etc., etc.
We'll explore this even deeper when we come back. Patrick Buick is our guest today. Dr. Buick is calling in from Cape Town, South Africa. As you know, Let's Talk Nutrition airs in coast to coast and as well as globally. We get to the global dimension of the show by streaming it, and we stream out of the studio every day across the globe, and we get 30,000 hits on average. Still that there, Gary? Is that still the number?
That's about an average, yeah.
30,000 people a day view this show. I don't know how many thousands listen to it, but thank you very much. I am very humbled and grateful for your viewership and listenership. And a special guest today, Dr. Patrick Buick, a serious medical researcher. It's wonderful to have Dr. Buick on because it gives you a window into the life of a scientist and what it's like and the kind of work that they do. And Dr. Buick has had a career where he's focusing in on the immune system and the sterols and sterolins that are derived not from cattle, not from rocks, but from the plants. I would say this, Dr. Buick, the destiny of humankind is intimately and inextricably connected to the plants.
I totally agree, Dr. Ganga. If you were talking about being vegan or vegetarian or whole, plant-based diet, we still can definitely today say with all certainty that there's enough scientific evidence that plant-based diets are still the most important and possibly the only nutritionally balanced way of eating. The ingestion of meat is one thing. I'm not against eating meat, but certainly we are not consuming sufficient plant-based material. That is where we are going wrong, and that is where we are losing the plot.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I think what we've done in drifting away in our relationship with plants, what we have done is thrown away the maps and the compass and put ourselves on a ship that's at sea, floundering around all over the place, and we're lost. We no longer have the compass. We no longer have the maps, and we're lost. That's, I don't know how, there's many ways to describe it. But plants, go ahead, please.
I was about to say, I just wanted to add to what we were talking before the break, and that's obesity. It's linked with the microbial commensals that we carry in our GITs, in our gastrointestinal tract. And it's been shown very eloquently in animal models where, as you change the diets of these animals, obviously it would apply to humans as well, that you are actually changing the profile of the microbes, or the microbiome as we now refer to it. And some microbial species are very, very, let's call them the fat microbes. In other words, they change profiles to become more inflammatory, and the person or the animal actually gains weight and becomes obese. And they can transplant these microbes from a fat animal into a thin animal. The moment the microbial species have been changed, the thin animal will pick up weight and become obese. And it's linked with our diet. It's linked with our plant-based intake of nutrition.
I just can't get it into. I have a hard time grappling with the idea that people keep looking for these exotic ways of staying healthy. They keep looking for, the fountain of youth, the pill for longevity, the pill for this and the pill for that, the therapy for this, the therapy for that. We can call off the search for the holy grail of health. It is the plants. This is not a secret, but yet we've still lost our way.
We have lost our way, effectively. It's a matter of going back to the way that our forefathers ate. They were obviously not faced with the same load of toxins and pesticides in the plant-based material that we can now purchase. Yes, but there are ways and means of, getting hold of good organic vegetables and fruits, etc. But we are not consuming sufficient, so we are slowly changing the microbial species within our gastrointestinal tract to become more obese and inflamed. And that long-term leads to the cancers, the cardiovascular problems, the diabetes, and, all the chronic diseases.
Most people think, not most, but many people think that fat is only found in animals. Turns out that fat is also in plants, right?
Yeah, exactly. We have the good plants. We have the good fat in the plants. And what we are currently ingesting in the form of meats is, in fact, the cholesterol, the bad fats. And that is why we are faced with this whole epidemic of, cardiovascular risks and increased cholesterol levels, etc., over the last 50, 60 years. And to make matters worse, the food industry has climbed on the bandwagon, and, they've refined these good fats from our plant-based sources. And that's the worst mistake we could have made 50, 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Buick has published a number of articles. One that I know for sure, was a while back, but it was entitled "Plant Sterols and Sterolins for Optimum Immunity." That sort of captures the theme that I'd like to highlight on the show today. What exactly are these plant sterols and sterolins, and what is their connection to immunity, and what would that have to do with you and me anyway? Dr. Patrick Buick is the guest today on Let's Talk Nutrition, the 2019 winter edition, and coast to coast and globally. Dr. Buick is calling in today from South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa. As I keep telling you, this show is within the continental United States, and it is international. We'll be back with Dr. Patrick Buick. We'll be back shortly. Well, really, at any age, if your immune system, which is the sentinel of your body, it's there, through natural selection, the immune system was created, and it helps you in times of infection and injury. It's there for a purpose. But paradoxically, it can go haywire. And when it does, it's not good. And while on the one hand, it's there to help heal, it can harm when when it doesn't work properly. And one of the consequences is this perpetuation of inflammation in the body. And when you look at autoimmune diseases and whatnot, it's remarkable. Dr. Buick forgot more about this than I will ever know. Dr. Buick, I welcome back. Just share very briefly your background and training with the audience. Just to sketch it, because you do it better than I can.
No, not a problem. Thank you so much once again. And look, I started my studies here in South Africa. I had just completed my master's degree in biosciences, and I was very kindly offered a sponsorship to study at a French university. So I spent the next 5 years at the University of Claude Bernard in Lyon, in France. I do speak French, obviously. And where I did my PhD in immunopathology. Immunopathology is obviously everything to do with pathological processes involving the immune system. And when I trained as an immunologist in France, we knew of 2 or 3 things, and that is inflammation, responsible for quite a few damage, to tissues and organs. We knew about cancer. Little did we know really that cancer was in fact a failure of the immune response. And allergies, an allergy would be an overt or a hyper response to airborne allergens or what have you. And those were the 3 main categories. But today, if you look at the definition of these chronic conditions, we realize that the underlying pathology is directly linked with the way our immune cells actually function. Either a lack of control, as you've already alluded to, the autoimmune diseases, it's literally a lack of control. Cancer is an immunosuppressed or immunodeficiency state, and then obviously an allergic response would then be a hypersensitive. But we know a lot more about immune cells today than what back in the days of 1975 when I trained.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Buick. For those of you, if you can find this article by Dr. Buick, it's a primer on what Dr. Buick is alluding to. It's entitled Plant Sterols and Sterolins for Optimum Immunity. And there he talks about the sterols and sterolins. He talks about the functioning of the immune system and so on. It's easy to read. You'll get it. There's a product called Moducare that you're intimately familiar with. And that product is constituted of sterols and sterolins. What are sterols and sterolins, and what is Moducare?
Sure. Sterols and sterolins, if we can just start by sterols. Sterols are the plant fats. The same way that we make cholesterol and we ingest cholesterol from, the meats that we ingest. The plants don't make a cholesterol molecule, but they make a very similar molecule, which we refer to as the plant sterols. And the sterolins is literally the same molecule with an added glucose moiety to it. Mm-hmm. And what we showed back in 1990 was that these molecules are actually refined. They are removed from our foods. So all the low-fat foods that we are ingesting are devoid of plant sterols. So obviously, if the foods are plant-based, especially the oils. For instance, good, seed oils, nut oils should be extremely rich in these plant fats, but because of the nature of these fats, that when they do stand, they tend to precipitate out of the oil, so it's not appealing to the eye of the consumer. They would rather go for a refined oil, which is clear, see-through, rather than a good oil in a dark bottle, such as an olive oil or a nut oil. So these are refined from our foods, And they're partially responsible for the way our immune system functions, because our lymphocytes, our lymphoid cells, carry the receptors for these particular molecules, and they compete, obviously, for cholesterol. That is why a high plant-based diet is a very efficient way to lower so-called serum cholesterol levels without the need for medications.
And in Moducare, are the ingredients, are they extracts? What are they? What are the compounds?
They are in fact literally 90% pure sterols and steroids.
Okay.
It's a raw material which is obtained, and I can be very honest and say this on air. It is in fact from the pine industry. When they cut down the pine trees to make pulp, to make paper, they crush the trunk, and obviously the pine oil is extremely rich in this plant sterols. It's one of those plants with possibly one of the highest concentrations of the plant sterols. So it is purchased, it is cleaned up slightly. In other words, they just remove the non-sterols point, and those sterols are then dried and then encapsulated. So the capsules of Moducare contain literally pure sterols and steroids up to 90-92% purity.
That's interesting. So the compounds are derived from the pine tree and the trunk, not the bark, but literally what how can I put it? The inner parts of the trunk?
The bark. Exactly. The pine bark is very well known for its very high concentration of pycnogenol. We know the company does not make use of the bark, but rather of the wood of the pine, which is extremely rich in the in the pine tree.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Moducare, modulate. Is that what the product is doing? It's modulating the immune system. If it's underperforming or overperforming, it then will adjust it.
Exactly. Very well described, and that's why it's called Moducare, and that is it cares for your immune system and it modulates your immune system. In other words, it's not just a simple immune booster. If your immune system needs to be boosted, it will do so because it targets the very cells of the immune system which may be a bit sluggish. At the same time, if you have an uncontrolled, very inflamed type of immune profile, it will bring control to that scenario as well, because it targets different immune cells. So when you have certain subset of cells which are too sluggish, it will increase the activity of those cells. If you have certain cells which are supposed to be controlling, which are too low, it increases the activity of those cells. And obviously, that's why we've been able to show this in different disease entities such as tuberculosis, where you need to boost the immune system. We've shown this in HIV, where you need to control the immune system and prevent it from becoming inflamed.
When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. We'll have the LTN health question of the day. Dr. Patrick Buick from Cape Town, South Africa. a version of Natural Geographic. I mean, we explore so many interesting, wonderful themes with these great guests. Dr. Patrick Buick today is one good example. We were talking about sterols and sterolins. These are chemicals, compounds found in nature in a particular tree. It turns out that the sterols and sterolins confer a wonderful immune effect for humans, as you heard Dr. Buick describe. Here's the question. What is the source of the sterols and sterolins that you find in Moducare? Which tree? Is it A, the eucalyptus tree, B, maple tree, C, pine tree? What is the source of the sterols and sterolins in Moducare? Is it the eucalyptus, maple, or pine tree? Give us a call.
877-897-8255. That's 877-897-TALK.
And you can win a $25 supplement gift card and get some Moducare. Dr. Buick, do you take the Moducare on an empty stomach? When do you take it? And so on.
It is best taken on an empty stomach, because I did refer to the fact that it does compete with cholesterol. Obviously, if we are going to be ingesting a meal which is very high in animal fats, the absorption will be limited, so it is best taken about half an hour before meals. The recommended dose is 3 capsules per day. Now, I know that many people just battle to remember the midday dose, so what I've normally suggested to my patients is to take 2 early morning and then 1 before they go to bed at night. By then, the absorption is obviously it won't be hampered in any way in the presence of any animal fats. So it's 3 capsules a day, preferably on an empty stomach.
Just so there's no conceptual confusion, sterols and sterolins are not cholesterol.
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, no, definitely not. If you look at the structure of the molecule of the sterols, it looks very similar to the cholesterol molecule, and that is the reason why it actually competes for the receptor to which cholesterol binds. The Japanese made use of huge, tablets of pure sterols as a natural therapy to lower cholesterol levels in patients with hypercholesterolemia. But it is not cholesterol. Let's call them, these molecules are the cholesterol of plants.
If somebody was suffered from hypercholesterolemia, would they take the product and find maybe a reduction in cholesterol levels, or no?
Oh, yes, very much so. It would. They would have to review possibly the dose that's recommended for the immune management or the immune modulating properties, but should they increase the dose, the cholesterol level would in fact also be positively influenced as well. Increasing the levels.
Does somebody with an the very difficult autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, does it confer any effect relative to that condition?
Yes, very much so. We actually did a small study that was presented at a conference quite a few years back, where we looked specifically at seropositive RA patients, or rheumatoid arthritis patients. And what we found was that the markers of inflammation in the peripheral blood of these patients actually decreased. And the patients responded clinically by reporting that they were waking up in the morning, feeling less stiff in their affected joints. Obviously, it's not an overnight wonder drug. It does take a bit of time. The study actually ran over a period of 6 months. But even so, in those patients using the Moducare, there was a definite benefit to be derived, predominantly because it actually switches off those inflammatory markers which are directly responsible for the tissue damage and the cartilage destruction.
Mm-hmm. Can one take too much Moducare?
Good question. One cannot overdose with Moducare. I am aware of one particular patient, obviously quite despondent, had just been diagnosed as being seropositive for HIV, and she tried to literally swallow the whole bottle of Moducare capsules, thinking that she was going to pass. And unfortunately, well, fortunately for her rather, this is not something that you can overdose on. It will not create any problems whatsoever. Even if you take triple the dose, it will not have any negative effects whatsoever.
Here's the health question for today. You can win a $25 gift card with a supplement gift card with the right answer. The sterols and sterolins that are found in the Moducare product are derived from which tree? I'll just give you two choices. You can guess. The pine tree or the eucalyptus tree? Which one? 877-897-8255. Dr. Buick, currently, is there something you're working on, either a laboratory study with animals in vitro or with animals or with humans relative to sterols and sterolins?
Currently, not directly. We are still obviously supervising the research. What's really comforting is the fact that there's now loads of other laboratories, other scientists out there that are publishing work, on the sterols and the steroids, and they're just confirming what we published many years back, that just the general anti-cancer properties, the way that the immune cells function. So it's actually, independently corroborating what we had published, maybe 10, 15 years ago. But I'm personally not directly involved with new research. I'm very keen because as we learn more about the certain new immune cells that we are describing, I would ultimately really want to see what the direct effects is, especially in the chronic inflammatory conditions.
Let's go to Tampa. Roy, what's the answer?
Good morning. Pine tree.
Thank you very much. You're a winner.
Hey, so are you, Doc.
Thank you, brother. Dr. Buick, it's a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you for your work. Thank you for being a ardent and wonderful scientist and doing the medical research that you've done and introducing Moducare to the world. You've done a great service and continue to do so. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Dr. Darko. And I have a proposal for you. How about planning it that we actually do a show from Cape Town together?
You're on, brother.
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. I want to come to Cape Town so bad. Let me talk to the suits and see. That would be that would be remarkable. Maybe we could do more than one show. We could do a series down there. We'll be back tomorrow. Love you. Your health is your wealth.